very often, during those times in D.C. when nothing was getting done, something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, all we've been doing is naming things after dead congressmen. He made it sound like that was the easy stuff to accomplish while he was out there. In my case, he said it to me when I was a staffer for him in the early 2000s, when there was a little bit of gridlock in D.C. and we couldn't imagine that politics could be any more divisive than it was back then. The reality, however, is that we're here today naming a highway after a man that served this community with distinction. It does take a bit of work. With so many important issues facing our state and our nation, efforts to name a road are rightly not necessarily prioritized. But these types of resolutions are also important for our own history. And so in the waning days of the 2024 spring session, we got this resolution through the Senate. And in the waning days of the 103rd General Assembly in January of this year, Greg shepherded the resolution through the House with broad bipartisan unanimous support. And then so here we are today, as Lane would put it, naming something after a dead congressman. He'd say to me from time to time that he didn't want this type of thing to be done for him. And for a time, I agreed and I respected that. I understood that although Lane was confident in his own mind and in himself, at the end of the day, he didn't want it to look like it was about him, about his ego, when he wanted his legacy to be the impact on all the people that he served. So like his advice not to go to law school and not to get married, I'm ignoring this too, and here we are. I'm pretty sure he was joking about the first two, but I won't know for sure. I would argue that there are reasons why we needed to do this, regardless of Lane's initial thoughts about it. First, the legacy of such a valued public servant deserves to be honored in as many ways as we can. So whether it's a post office in Rock Island, or the VA clinic in Galesburg, or this highway just a block away from here, Lane earned that honor by his words and his deeds. He was a champion for federal employees on the Rock Island Arsenal and the U.S. Postal Service, their right to organize and bargain collectively for good pay and for good benefits, and to keep those jobs right here in Western Illinois. He was a champion for veterans, not just in Galesburg, but throughout Illinois and across the United States. Veterans across the country have VA disability status and health care treatment because of the work Lane spent years fighting for, including, as Phil mentioned, fighting members of his own party. And Lane was a champion for building up our nation's transportation, connecting our communities, and providing safe and secure infrastructure, while helping to make sure the benches and the books at the union halls were empty because everyone had a good paying job. The second reason is that this naming dedication provides support and reinforcement for his family, his staff, people like Phil, like Dennis King, Lane's chief of staff for so many years, and so many other folks here with us today. It provides support and reinforcement for his friends, his constituents, and reinforces how Lane impacted their lives, how he shaped who they were as people, and inspired them to go on and do their own amazing work. It's partially for all of us here, perhaps a little bit selfishly, who don't ever want to let him or what he stood for go. Lastly, but most importantly, the signs that we're unveiling today provide a starting point for anyone who never knew Lane while he was with us. It's been more than 10 years since Lane passed. It's been closer to 20 years since he left office. So as much as we gathered here know and revere him as our friend and as our congressman, there's an entire generation that doesn't know necessarily what Lane stood for and what a true public servant he was. I want each next generation to see those signs up on this hill and ask Google or Siri or Alexa or whatever the next thing in AI is, who was Rep. Lane Evans? And I want them to find out that Lane was one of a proud American tradition of progressive populism. The real populism that elevates the hardworking people of this country and the people down in their luck, our seniors, our veterans who are all just looking for a fair shake, who want good wages and good benefits that mean that they can live, raise a family, live their life, and retire with dignity. Lane was unapologetic for recognizing that healthcare is a right and not something to be decided by insurance company CEOs or hospital executives. He was vocal about making sure we weren't creating veterans by engaging in conflicts that don't serve American interests. And that if we did create those veterans, then we better damn well take care of them when they come home. Lane was always ready to help that next generation, to mentor it, and to be an example of how to serve. I was that next generation back in the early 2000s. I was that kid from New York that had worked on a couple campaigns. I knew a little bit about politics, but I didn't know what it meant to serve the people until I worked for Lane Evans. Lane was the real deal. He taught me that when a constituent calls your office, you treat it like it's the most important thing in their life that day, because it often is. He taught me to listen, to empathize, to understand their perspective even if I don't agree, and to use those tools to find common ground. And he taught me that you don't have to give grand speeches or pound on the podium to get attention to be an effective representative. I would not be an elected member of the Illinois Senate today if it weren't for Lane Evans, because of what I learned from him. And I'm just one person of one generation that Lane inspired. All along the way, Lane brought people along with him. Everyone standing up here, everyone who raised their hand when we started, thousands of people that aren't even with us today were inspired by Lane. There are people still working campaigns out there, still working in government. There are men and women who run nonprofits or veterans organizations. There are people out there who are just kinder and supportive people, doing whatever they can to lift people up because they saw in Lane a role model that they could believe in. Lane continues to inspire me as an elected official. And though any politician trying to be like Lane will fall short, that's no reason not to still try. Lane's ability to inspire others shouldn't die simply because he is gone. And if these signs on this highway bring even just one person along to find that inspiration, it will have been worth it. So I thank you for sharing this day with all of us and with Lane's spirit. And just want to say, as many others have said this morning, thank heavens for Lane Evans. 1, 2, 3. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to keep up to date with news from the caucus. For more information on what I'm working on, please follow me on social media using the links in the description below.